Let's start with something incredibly simple but surprisingly powerful. A knee-to-chest stretch that gently brings life back to the lower body. Over the years, many of my older patients have quietly shared the same concern. That part of their body, the part they once associated with energy, intimacy, and confidence, now feels sluggish, even numb. And I understand why that happens. As we age, blood flow tends to slow down in the lower pelvis and abdomen, especially if we've had surgeries, if we sit a lot, or if we've simply lost the habit of moving those areas regularly. The result is not just physical discomfort or stiffness, it's the creeping sense that something vital has gone quiet inside us. But here's the truth I always remind people of. The body never gives up on us. It simply waits for us to reconnect with it. And that can begin with something as small and doable as this one stretch. I still remember a man named Walter who came into my office about a year ago. He was 71, a retired school principal from a quiet Ohio suburb, widowed a few years back. He'd recently had prostate surgery, and although the operation itself went well, he told me in a soft, almost apologetic voice that everything down there just felt off. It wasn't pain, more like absence. He didn't feel connected to his lower body anymore. His words stuck with me. I don't feel like myself. And I knew what he meant. I've heard it from others too, like Dennis, 68, from Arizona, who described his pelvic area as feeling asleep since retirement, or Brenda, 74, from Michigan, who said it was like the lights were still on, but the room was empty. These aren't just metaphors, they're signs that circulation, muscle tone, and awareness have been slowly drifting away. With Walter, I started him on the simplest thing possible. Each morning, before he even got out of bed, I asked him to lie flat and slowly bring one knee toward his chest, holding it gently, breathing deeply, then switching sides. That was it. Just a few reps, once a day. Nothing fancy, nothing forceful. 3 weeks later, he came in smiling. "I'm back in my body," he said, and I could see he meant it. His posture changed, his eyes looked brighter. That stretch didn't fix everything, but it gave him something back, presence. What often helps in cases like these is not a big change, but a consistent small one. The knee-to-chest stretch is a classic for a reason. You lie on your back, bend one leg, and gently pull the knee toward your chest, using your hands or just letting gravity assist. Hold for 20 seconds and no need to push or strain, then switch legs. Repeat 3 times on each side. If lying on the floor is uncomfortable, do it on a firm mattress. If your hands don't reach easily, use a towel behind the knee. The key isn't intensity, it's attention and consistency. Think of it like watering a plant. You don't flood it once a month, you give it a little every day. That's how circulation works too. I want you to remember this. You're not broken and you're not alone. There's a lot more life inside you than you might realize right now. These little actions, a breath here, a stretch there, they are messages to your body that you haven't given up on it, and it listens. I've seen it too many times to doubt it. Like a window cracked open after a long winter, the fresh air comes in slowly, quietly, and with it, energy returns. So take your time, trust the process. You don't need to chase youth. You're building something even better, confidence, comfort and control, one breath at a time. Another gentle move I often recommend, and especially for reconnecting with the lower body, is the butterfly stretch. It may look simple, even too simple at first, but don't let that fool you. This little stretch can do a lot for blood flow and pelvic awareness. As we age, it's incredibly common for the muscles deep in the lower abdomen, especially around the pelvis and inner thighs, to become tight, underused, or just plain forgotten. And when that happens, it doesn't just affect how we move, it also plays into how we feel in our own body, both physically and emotionally. Reduced blood flow, poor pelvic flexibility, and lack of movement in this area can influence everything from digestion and bladder function to intimacy and hormonal balance. And yet, many people over 60 have never even heard of stretching these muscles or assume it's not for them anymore. I promise you it is. It's not about touching your toes or being flexible like in your 20s. It's about waking something back up that never really left. It's just been quiet for a while. A few months ago, I had a conversation with a woman named Marjorie, 66, retired bookkeeper, living alone in Florida since her husband passed. She came in not for anything urgent, but she said something that caught my attention. "I just feel like that whole part of me is turned off," she told me. "It's like my lower body doesn't belong to me anymore." She wasn't in pain, but she described a kind of heaviness in her lower belly, a disconnect. Her digestion had slowed down and she didn't feel like herself. She even admitted to skipping walks because her hips felt stiff, and she figured there wasn't much to be done about it. After a few minutes of chatting, I asked if she'd be open to trying one simple thing, just sitting quietly for a few minutes each evening and doing the butterfly stretch. She hesitated, but agreed to try. A month later, she came back looking different. Not younger, not fixed, just more present. She said the first few days were odd, like her body wasn't used to being noticed in that way. But then something shifted. "It's like my lower half remembered me," she joked. The heaviness had eased up, her posture improved, and most of all, she felt like she had a tool, something she could do for herself. Another man I know, Paul, 70 from North Carolina, added this stretch into his evening routine to deal with hip tension that had been interfering with sleep. Same result, not dramatic overnight change, but a quiet, steady improvement in comfort and confidence. What often works best for people in their 60s and beyond is what I call kind motion, movements that are forgiving, adaptable, but still meaningful. The butterfly stretch is one of the best examples. You simply sit down, bring the soles of your feet together in front of you, and let your knees drop outward. Keep your back straight, not rigid, just aware, and gently press down on your thighs with your hands or elbows, only as far as is comfortable. You'll likely feel a stretch in your inner thighs and hips. Don't force it. Stay there for 30 seconds, breathing slowly. You can do it on the floor, on a cushion, or even on your bed if sitting low is difficult. I often suggest making this part of a bedtime wind-down routine with soft music or dim lighting, so it becomes not just a stretch, but a calming ritual for the whole nervous system. Repeating it daily or every other day is enough to start feeling a difference. Here's something I always tell people when we talk about these things. This isn't just about stretching muscles. It's about reconnecting with parts of yourself that might have gone quiet. Maybe no one told you that you still have permission to feel good in your body, but you do. You always have. Even if things have changed, even if some moments feel far away, you are still here, and your body responds to kindness. You don't need to do anything extreme. Even a simple stretch, done with care and consistency, can open a window where things start to move again, and where you feel like yourself. Again, not like you were, but like who you still are. One of the easiest and most overlooked ways to wake up circulation down there and to gently support both physical and emotional confidence is something called a pelvic tilt. Now, I know the name might sound a bit clinical, but don't let that turn you off. This is a small controlled motion that activates your core, strengthens the muscles around your lower spine and pelvis, and sends a very clear signal to the body. We're not done yet. For many people over 60, a big part of the challenge is that the muscles deep in the lower abdomen become weak simply because they haven't been used much. We sit a lot more, we move a lot less. And those little muscles, the ones that help support our posture, blood flow, and even sexual health, start to check out. Not because we're broken, but because the body responds to habit. The good news is, with the right kind of attention, those muscles can wake up again, and you might be surprised by how quickly you feel the difference. This takes me back to a man I worked with not long ago, Bill, 69, a retired mechanic from Arizona. He came in not for anything urgent, but more to talk. He looked healthy on the outside, but he leaned in close when he said, "I've just felt flat, especially below the belt." He said it without shame, just honesty. His energy was low, he wasn't sleeping well, and even though nothing was exactly wrong, he felt like his body had hit a kind of pause. He admitted he was embarrassed to bring it up with his regular doctor, so he kept quiet for months, thinking maybe it was just age. We talked about simple things and movement, breath, daily habits, and I suggested he try pelvic tilts each morning. He laughed at first. "Is that even a real exercise?" But he agreed to try. We pulled up a short video together and walked through the motion right there in my office, lying flat on a mat, knees bent, feet flat, and gently tucking the pelvis to press the lower back into the floor, then lifting the hips just a little while, keeping the upper back grounded. It took about 5 minutes. 2 weeks later, he called to say he'd been doing them every morning and felt like someone flipped the power back on. His words: he was sleeping better. He said his stomach felt stronger, and while he didn't share all the details, I could hear the pride in his voice. Very small movement gave him something back, not just physically but mentally too. And this isn't just Bill's story. I've seen this stretch help people like Dolores, 73 from Oregon, who used it to regain control over lower back pain, and bladder support, and Leonard, 67 from Georgia, who simply felt more stable walking upstairs after a month of practice. It's one of those exercises that meets you where you are and lifts you a little higher. What often helps, especially in the morning when the body is still stiff, is lying down on your back with your knees bent and feet planted flat on the ground. From there, you gently tighten the lower abdominal muscles and press your lower back into the floor by tipping your pelvis slightly upward. Then, without straining, lift your hips just a bit off the ground, hold for about 5 seconds, and lower down with control. Repeat this about 10 times, breathing steadily and not rushing. You don't need to do it perfectly. You don't need to do it fast. You just need to do it regularly. Once a day is enough to make a noticeable change. You can do it on a yoga mat, a firm mattress, or even a thick carpet, whatever feels supportive and safe. Some people like to place their hands on their lower belly to help feel the movement better. Others close their eyes and focus on the breath. The key is to stay connected. I always say, this isn't about fixing anything. It's about coming back to something. You've lived decades with this body. It's gotten you through more than most people know. It's not failing you now. It's just asking to be noticed again. These little movements, like the tilt of your pelvis, may seem minor, but they carry a message. I'm here, I care, I still choose to move forward, like flipping a light switch in a room you haven't walked into for a while. Suddenly you can see it clearly again. It was always there waiting. You're not too late, you're just getting started. One stretch that I've seen make a real difference for people over time, especially those dealing with lower back tightness or poor circulation in the legs, is the seated forward bend. Now, I know the name. Might sound like something out of a yoga class, but don't worry. We're not trying to turn you into a gymnast. This is a slow, simple stretch that helps release the back of your body, the hamstrings, the lower spine, even your calves. And as you age, those muscles tend to tighten up like thick cables that haven't been moved in years. The problem is that when the back of your body is tight, it restricts blood flow and movement to areas that really need it. Not just for comfort, but for energy, stability, even proper function of your bladder and digestive system. That tension pulls on the pelvis, puts pressure on the spine, and before you know it, even short walks feel exhausting or unsafe. I don't believe in magical fixes, but this is one of those stretches that does more than people expect, because it gently opens up the parts of your body that have been quietly shutting down. I remember one woman I worked with, Roberta, 73, a retired nurse from Michigan. She was sharp and funny and independent, but she came to me one day and said, "I'm starting to hate walking. I don't trust my own legs anymore." She explained that after about 10 minutes of walking, she felt heavy and tired in her lower body, not painful exactly, just drained. Her back was often stiff, and she had started avoiding outings just to spare herself the discomfort. I asked her if she ever stretched, and she kind of laughed, saying, "Not since the 70s. So we started small. I had her sit with her, legs out in front of her on a yoga mat, and just gently lean forward, reaching toward her feet without rounding her back. At first she could barely move an inch, but I told her that didn't matter. The point wasn't how far you go, but how often you go there. 2 weeks later, she called me and said something I'll never forget. "It's like my legs are mine again." She felt more stable, her energy returned, and her posture looked different, taller, looser, more grounded. Another client, Greg, 68 from Pennsylvania, had struggled with sciatic tension and stiffness in his back, and after adding this stretch into his morning routine, he told me that he stopped needing to lean on furniture to put on his socks. These stories aren't rare. They're just the results of consistent small effort in the right direction. What often helps in cases like these is sitting down on a firm surface, that could be the floor, a yoga mat, or even your bed, and gently straightening your legs out in front of you. From there, you slowly begin to reach forward with your arms, aiming toward your toes or shins. The important part is to keep your back long. Don't round it like you're collapsing. Forward. Just move until you feel a soft stretch along the back of your legs or low spine. Hold that position for about 20 seconds, breathing slowly. Then gently come back up. Repeat that about 3 times. Don't worry about how far you can reach. Don't force anything. It's better to feel a gentle pull and stay safe than to push hard and end up stiff or sore. If you need, place a cushion under your knees or sit on the edge of a folded blanket to help tilt your pelvis slightly forward. You can even use a towel or belt around your feet to help guide your hands forward. The key is consistency. Doing this stretch every day or every other day can loosen years of tension. Here's what I want you to hold on to. Your body is still listening. Even if you haven't moved a certain way in years, even if you feel stiff or disconnected, there's still life and flow waiting to return. It just needs your invitation. Think of it like dusting off a room you haven't used in a while. The light still works, the walls still hold. All it takes is opening the door and stepping in again. You don't need to stretch like you're in your 20s. You just need to stretch like someone who still cares, because you are worth that care. Every inch forward is a sign that you're still here, still capable, still choosing to move toward comfort and connection. One of the most calming and quietly powerful movements I often suggest is something called the cat-cow stretch. And trust me, it's gentler and more useful than the name might sound. The reason I like it so much, especially for older adults, is because it's not just about stretching the back, it's about reconnecting with rhythm, with breath, with slow motion, and with awareness. As we age, the nervous system can start to feel overstimulated in some ways and underactive in others. The lower spine and pelvis in particular tend to lose both mobility and attention, especially if we spend most of our time sitting or moving cautiously. That area starts to stiffen, the flow of energy and blood slows down, and for many people, especially men, it can feel like the entire lower half of the body has gone quiet. There's no major pain, but there's also no spark. This gentle spinal motion is one of the best ways I've found to turn the lights back on in that area, not just physically, but emotionally too, because when the spine moves fluidly, the rest of the body follows. That reminds me of someone I worked with about a year ago, Gary, a retired teacher from Colorado, 68. Kind, thoughtful, always took care of others, but admitted he wasn't really in touch with his own body anymore. He said something during our first session that I've heard from more people than I can count. It just feels like everything down there is asleep. He wasn't talking about a medical condition necessarily. He was describing that dull, heavy, low-energy feeling that often settles in after years of putting your body second. He didn't feel pain exactly, but he also didn't feel much. So if anything, his sleep was shallow, his digestion was off, and even standing up from a chair made his lower back tighten. We didn't jump into anything intense. Instead, I showed him the cat-cow stretch, which can be done on hands and knees, or even from a seated position. At first he felt silly, like it was too simple to work, but I explained that it wasn't about big results. It was about slow reactivation. He started doing it in a chair every morning, just 5 minutes while the coffee brewed. After 2 weeks, he told me he felt more grounded, more aware of his posture, and even a bit lighter in his hips. A month later, he had moved to the floor and said, "I feel like my spine is breathing again." That's the kind of feedback I love, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just a real man feeling more present inside his own body. I've seen similar results with people like Joan, 70, from Texas, who used it to ease pelvic tension that had been building up for years, and Leonard, 74, from New York, who added it to his bedtime routine to help with back stiffness and found it improved the quality of his sleep. What often helps is starting simple. Get on your hands and knees on a soft surface. A yoga mat or carpet works well. Your knees should be under your hips, your hands under your shoulders. As you breathe in, slowly let your belly drop down while gently lifting your head and tailbone. That's the cow part. Then, as you exhale, round your spine like an angry cat, tuck your chin to your chest and pull your belly button in toward your spine. That's the cat part. Do it slowly, matching each movement to your breath. 10 repetitions is a great start. If getting on the floor is difficult, you can modify this stretch from a chair. Arch and round your spine while seated, still syncing with your breathing. The most important thing is to stay consistent and gentle. This isn't a race or a workout. It's a conversation with your body. I want you to remember something. Your body still listens even if it's been quiet for a while. The cat-cow stretch is like a soft whisper that wakes up the spine and reminds your nervous system, I'm still here and I still care. You're not trying to become younger or stronger overnight. You're simply reintroducing your body to itself, one breath, one movement at a time. Like opening a window in a room that hasn't been aired out in years, something fresh begins to move. And that feeling of lightness, of presence, of subtle energy returning, that's the reward. You don't have to push, you just have to begin. If even one of these exercises felt right for you, let us know in the comments which one you'll try first. And if you already have your own tips or routines, share them. It might help someone else realize they're not alone. Subscribe and hit the bell. We share only simple, proven ways to support your health and bring your confidence back. And most importantly, you're stronger than you think. Your body hasn't given up, it's just waiting for you to take its hand again. Life goes on.